Welcome, everybody, to the Revenue Problem Solvers podcast, where we try to crack the code on growing your business by tackling the challenges that keep revenue leaders up at night. I'm Carl Ortmans, and on today's episode, we're going to dive into a topic that is maybe a little bit spicy, and it's one that is, I would say, the most talked about thing I'm seeing right now: outbound. And so before we jump in, today's podcast is sponsored by Virtual Causeway. Virtual Causeway is a B2B go-to-market partner who helps you generate more qualified leads, speed up your sales cycle, and grow revenue, all without adding headcount. Learn more about them at virtualcauseway.com and mention the show for a special rate. And now, before we jump in, here's why today's conversation matters. Imagine implementing just one strategy from today's discussion and watching your revenue metrics shift within weeks, not months. That's exactly what the goal of the podcast is. Talk about the revenue challenges others have faced and how they're solving it. As I like to say, success leaves clues, and we're going to highlight some of those for you today. Now, I have a special guest today, and with me to talk about this topic is Beth Mastre. And so I have to admit that I've been following Beth's content for quite some time. And then she started to interact with the podcast clips. I gotta say, I got pretty pumped. Maybe a little bit fanboy. Is that a good way to say it? And we exchanged a couple of emails and some chats on LinkedIn. And I finally said, hey, would you like to join the podcast? And she agreed very graciously. Now, for those of you who don't know Beth, if you don't know, she has an incredibly strong business development background, has worked with companies like BCI and Boulder Logic before working alongside Mark Hunter, or some of you might know Sales Hunter, Anthony Iannaro, as the VP of Strategic Development. But now she's turned her attention to become the founder at bethmastre.com, which I guarantee we're going to learn a little bit more about today. Beth, thank you and welcome so much for joining the podcast today.
Hey, I'm really excited to be here. I always love talking to people like yourself and leaders and finding out what's going on in their world.
That's awesome. Well, let's solve some of these challenges, shall we? So to kick off, can you give everybody a bit of context about your world? What industries or verticals do you work in? What are your selling motions? What size companies do you work with?
Yeah, so I'm pretty much industry agnostic because everybody seems to be looking to create revenue. We are in a very weird time. I've done this for 30 plus years. It has never been this strange. I've never seen companies give departments budgets only to have them pull them back. And so now they're left without budgets. I know last year I was really surprised in Q3 when travel was like abruptly ended, like they were done with travel. That usually happens in Q4. I've actually seen that in Q1. So we are in some very unique times, but generally the clients that I service and work with kind of range in size. I mean, anything from 3 salespeople to hundreds of salespeople. And so it's really about, do they have the problem where sales reps are spending an ornate amount of time creating email and then having nothing to show for it? And reps, let's be honest, they like email because it looks like activity. And email is great in my world. I really think it's part of a plan. It's not the whole plan. You can't just do social selling. It's never going to work. But it has to be part of your strategy.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. There was a point where it was, if you're not a social seller, and it was funny because social selling all of a sudden hit the scene, and then you had, oh, I'm an expert in social selling. Where did social sell? Okay, social selling has to be part of, but not the entire strategy, I wouldn't say.
Correct. And I've seen where social, like everybody bought into, I say in today's world, this has been going on for a while, everybody wants the easy button, right? I want the easy button. This is the thing. And this is where I think companies go wrong is they put things in the wrong order. They go buy really fantastic tools, but unless you know how to have the conversation, the tool isn't going to help. And then they're always disappointed. It's like, oh, we just spent, millions of dollars on X, and then X didn't produce any results. Well, that's because they didn't know how to have a conversation.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's something that I am fairly passionate about saying is, if you can't write down the process and what you're doing, technology is not going to help you. It's only going to hinder you. It's going to highlight faster of like, you actually don't know what you're doing, and you now have to spend more money to try to fix it, or not even having an owner, and all of a sudden you're looking around going, well, who owns this tool? And well, we don't really know why we bought it, because somebody said, hey, there's a whole new shiny thing, we'll just implement it and it'll fix the world. Just like AI, right? You just implement AI and it fixes the world.
Correct. Everybody thinks AI is like the greatest thing, but this is what I tell everyone. I'm like, AI is about as mature as AOL was in the 80s.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
It's very true. You have to teach it what you want it to do. So anyway, so but I think we could probably have some fun with that one. However, when we talked about the podcast, I asked you about the topic, and I said, what's a successful revenue initiative you're leading or have led, or an existing challenge you're solving or have solved? And you pretty easily and quickly jumped at the topic of companies make the mistake of outbound, and more so specifically about how email and messaging. And it was interesting that we had a bit of a back and forth. But maybe we can start there, because you kind of alluded to it, of people like email because it's the easy button. And maybe that's the hot take. Is there an easy button for outbound and messaging?
I don't think in today's world there is. I mean, there's all I love the companies who put together all the statistics, like the big boys, like the HubSpots, the Gartners, the Salesforce of the world. They do a lot of research. And we know statistically it takes about 18 touches to engage with a prospect. A lot of reps will quit it too and have this belief system that, gosh, you know what? They are not interested. And I'm saying, like, well, you just started. So I've been called professionally persistent, because my whole thought is that it takes a lot. We don't know what's going on in their world. For one thing, you just don't know what's going on at work. Like, are they so buried? Are they focused on other initiatives? And then we don't know what's happening in their home life. I remember a deal that was going to close, and 9 months, it was a big deal and big company. And I remember thinking, like, what happened? Well, come to find out that the person who was to sign off on it was very, very sick. When they finally came back, we closed the deal. So
Right.
My word to leaders is, when you're pushing your team to do things, that's great. Like, they need coaching and mentoring, and you need to be on top of them in terms of what they're doing. But we also have to have an awareness of literally what's going on in the environment. And you may not be top of mind. Maybe you're fourth in the priority stack, but they only have room to work on 3.
Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of outbound and messaging that we see is very eye-centric, not customer-centric. Is that the first thing that well, maybe I'll ask it in a different way, because it's my question. There's an I-centric versus a we-centric. And like you just said about that opportunity, it's, I want the deal to close and I want a meeting with you, versus solving the other side of the coin of taking it from their shoes and understanding their world. So for your view of outbound, where's the miss? Where are people not seeing the right approach? And what are the things that you clearly fix when you go and work with them?
Well, I think, because people have done this for a long time, and when people are brought in, just let's think about the onboarding for a second. It's, here's who we are, here's what we do, here's why we're great, here's how we can help you, here's how we can save you time and money. Look at the people we work with, right? Like, it's all about me. And then we go, okay, go sell. And then the challenge is, there's been no bridge built between what you know. So as salespeople, you know a lot. It's sort of like when I had to buy an air conditioner. It was painful. You call people. Of course, it was July. It died in July. I called all my friends. They gave me recommendations. And I think I called like 6 different companies. The first 5 people came to my door, said, I'm going to go look at your unit, went, looked at the unit, came back, handed me a piece of paper, told me how much it was going to cost, and then asked me when I wanted it installed. I think like they thought like they really had me. They didn't realize how much I could endure, even though it was the middle of July. The last guy came to me, and this is so important for sales people and sales leaders to hear, because what they're going to find out is that this last guy who came in, he walked my entire house. He asked me if my room was hot or cold, what time of year. He said, I'm going to go out and look at the unit. He goes, I want to go back in and look at your mechanical room, and then I'm going to sit down with you. And here's what he told me. He said, 1, He said, first of all, your unit is way too small for the size of your house. That's the first reason you've got problems. But secondly, he goes, I know you built this house. He said, but your mechanical room is all wrong. He goes, if you let me do this, he goes, I'm going to rip it all up. We're going to start over. He goes, I'm going to do it right. He goes, but what I can promise you is you won't have any hot and cold rooms anymore. And I'm going to save you a whole bunch of money every month. True to his word. I mean, I hired him because I didn't know what I didn't know. I felt the most comfortable, even though he said to me when he sat down, I'm not going to be the least expensive.
Right. But there was an issue. There was a situation of trust, it sounds like, because he was solving the problem versus just selling you a product.
100%. And that's what I see. I mean, so the easiest way for me to get a sense of the way a sales team is working is have them send me an email. Like, I'm always like, send me your best reps email, like one you're really proud of. And then I read it. And the subject line, I swear, only misses a disco ball. Like, that's the only thing missing from the subject line. It's so pre-selling and it's just, blinking and turning. And then you get into the body and it's like reading War and Peace. And here's the thing, nobody reads War. They don't read, scan. Right. Yeah. So if there's nothing in there for them and it's all about me, I'd love to learn about you. I'd love to see if I can help you. Here's what we've done for other people. All of that is a turnoff. And if you don't believe me, look at the last pitch you got in your inbox. Like, were you so excited you couldn't wait to hug them? Like, thank you. Where have you been my whole life? Probably not. Probably deleted it.
It's so funny you talk about War and Peace, because there was a gentleman who worked on my team, a couple of companies. I won't say, but he was new to becoming a full cycle rep. So he was in a very specific manufacturer. You know what? I have to give the details, but he was working in the manufacturing vertical and he was working with automation companies. But he was so used to relationship selling versus what we were doing was bringing new product to market. So it was learning a little bit different. We were getting people to think a little bit differently. And so that notion of prospecting was becoming a challenge for him. So when he started working with us, he was writing these emails and I said to him, I was like, hey man, what do you do next? And he's like, what do you mean? And I said, just look at this email. Like, what's your next move? You basically told them everything. Mm-hmm. And he kind of, was like, he wasn't really sold. And then I brought outreach in to try to help him with that. And so we had to click the button to click send. So we were being Castle compliant and such. And anyway, so then he calls me one day and he was upset with me, Beth. He called me, he's like, and I was having a hard time not laughing. And he holds his mouse up like this and he goes, this is broken. And he got mad at me and he was telling me why it was broken. I said, what's wrong? Like, I don't understand. He goes, I broke my mouse because I clicked send so much. And I just started laughing. And I said, so I've made the job easier for you, and you're upset with that. And he laughed at me, goes, oh, yeah, okay. And then he started to see his email replies and maybe the not replies and the opt-outs. And then he came to me, goes, so I was sending War and Peace, wasn't I? And I go, yeah, you were. And he goes, okay, now I get it. And he finally, like, he I don't want to say finally, but he bought into the notion of like, I'm going to give you some value, but I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to give you some value. I might ask you a question. I might give you something, but not take it. And we took that notion of Gary V's jab, jab, right hook sort of mentality, right? And that changed his perspective of doing outbound and prospecting. So I say that as a story because I think that there's a lot inside that. When you start talking to companies and they send you your best email and you look at it and go, would you be proud of opening this? What's your first thing that you talk to them about when you're going to rebuild their outbound, or you're working with them to help fix their messaging? How do you get them to think differently than accepting the status quo of what they're currently in?
It is a big shift, right? It's a shift because for 30 plus years, we've always talked about us. It's always been why us. And the reality of it is you have buyers who just don't know what they don't know. And we have a responsibility. And let me just pause and say one thing. The minute you start teaching your prospect, the easier it is because you're not selling anything anymore, right? You've just become a source of information. You're helping them. So when I'm looking at email, the very first thing I look for is what'd you say in your subject line? Because the subject line is the key. So if you don't have a good subject line, you're going to go ahead and get deleted. So like my best subject lines, I know it's going to startle people, 2 to 3 words, tops. Like my best subject line ever is requesting discount, because you know what I'm trying to do? I'm trying to punch them right between the eyes. I want them to go like, what? Who wants to, who's looking for a discount? And then when I get into it, I teach them something about discounts, right? And I need to lower the barrier. And what I mean by that is, in that first sentence, I'm going to teach them something, but in the second sentence, I'm basically going to say, even if there are no next steps, let's go ahead and have a conversation, because I'm going to provide you insights that you can implement immediately.
Yeah. And so what do they say when you ask the discount? Like, do they go, wait, what? How do they react to you even just getting them to think differently?
Yeah. So when I send someone that, what they find on the inside of that email, then after they've opened it, is I go, oh, she knows something. Like I call it fear of missing out, FOMO. We want your buyers to have FOMO. So they go, oh, I might have this problem and I don't even know it. Like a lot of times when I'm helping companies rewrite emails, it really comes down to helping them say, like, this is causing your team to drink from the fire hydrant. I'd like to show you exactly the questions you should be asking, because they're not obvious. They lay below the surface, but they have a profound impact on the outcome you're looking for.
Huh. So do you go and talk to them about that? Because it seems like status quo is there. And my experience is I know what I'm doing. You don't know differently. And especially with this emergence of AI, this whole like AI sandwich was explained to me. And I really like the notion: human, then AI, then human. The human leads with an insight. The AI delivers the output of what the human has asked it. And then the human validates whether or not, yeah, that's really correct, or it's way off base. And so with this notion of AI today and looking at it, how are companies willing to, like, how easily are you seeing it for companies to go, okay, what should I be saying, Beth, and how do I do it? Do you
Yeah.
drive them back to their value prop or the market? How do you get them to think differently about this?
Well, I think there's a few things. Let's talk about kind of what the root cause of some of this problem is. So the first part is that everyone's enamored with open rates, right? Everybody chases an open rate. So open rates statistically can be 40 to 60%, but here's the problem. Open rates do not equal engagement. And so if I've got a preview pane on my email, that's counted as an open. If I'm someone who's scrolling through quickly and I'm like, I'm just going to open and I don't do anything with it, I delete, that's considered an open, right? But what you really want is you want engagement. If you just send a cold email all about yourself, statistically, that's going to be somewhere between 1 to 5% of engagement. But if you can teach them what they might be missing, things that are changing in their environment, questions that they should be asking, all these different things, you can be towards 30%. That's like a fantastic sales rep. Because the other thing that people have to understand is email is a tool. It is not the only thing you're going to do in the sales process, but it is part of the strategy. And the whole idea about email is that you have to be able to just get a meeting. Get a meeting. That's the purpose of email. It is not to sell them. And that's what I see all the time. When I see emails, I'm like, oh, you are trying to land the $14 million sale in an email. No, I don't care if you're selling $260. If it's not transactional and it requires a conversation, your email should be about getting a meeting, period.
Oh, somebody hasn't given you a $14 million purchase order just because you sent them a great email?
Kyle, if that were true, I'd really be happy.
It is a whole different world now. So as we're talking about this, outbound has become such a positive, has become such a topic. There was a huge shift from sales led to product led, and so PLG became a big focus. Companies have been started on PLG, which has been great. We're seeing bigger companies implement a PLG motion. There's now a shift to go back to SLG, and especially with the way that digital marketing has changed and getting people to your website and all these different things. And so what I keep seeing is outbound is becoming I don't want to say, maybe I'll say it. Is outbound the new inbound? Is that where we're focused? Is that what the shift is happening?
I definitely think. Do you remember when that book came out? I forget who the author was, Blue Ocean.
Oh,
Everybody read Blue Ocean, right? Because at that point in time, the landscape had a lot of blue ocean. We are now in red ocean. There's very, very few companies, and if you're one of them who, gets to have blue ocean, good on you, fantastic. But most people are playing in a red ocean, which means that not only do my people or my prospects already have a provider, I have to get them. I have to take them away from a current provider. And my saying today is customers don't know what they don't know, and they're happy to be unhappy because they have containment around the unhappiness. So to say that outbound is the new inbound, 100%. I'm seeing full cycle reps come back into play because there's been a big disconnect between what a BDR and SDR and inside sales who have the hardest job, who are not appreciated. And then we hand over a lead. It's just awkward all the way around. It's awkward for the customer. It's awkward because the SDR, for example, did their job, got the meeting, but then when the sales rep gets them, they're like, what was this? This was not a real deal, right? Like there's just so many pieces that cause that not to work. Now, there are companies who do it really well. Seriously, there are. But more often than not, that's the problem.
so how do you approach this with companies who have an SDR or BDR motion that converted to an AE and say, look, the future of sales, and maybe I'm saying it too directly, but the future of sales is now full cycle. So when you get those full cycle sales reps, how do you coach them, or how do you teach your companies that you work with to not lose that prospecting motion while they're maintaining to build or to work their funnel and their opportunities? How do you get them to think about that?
Well, I think you have to get them to the word think is right. You have to get them to think differently. So the first thing is that they have to think about helping someone, not selling someone. That's why a lot of people don't like sales. They don't want to be that pushy, pitching, smarmy salesperson. And so when you have the ability to say, no, your job, and this is the way I look at it, I'm not here to sell anyone anything. What I am here to do is to help them recognize that they have a lot to offer their prospects. They really do. They just don't realize it. I'll give you an example. I had a gentleman who called me, this is a number of years ago. He was in the security world and they were losing clients. And he called me really wound up because he was like, I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen here. And they were losing like, I want to say 50% of their clients. And so I didn't know, are you the same or are you different? And he rattled off like 13 different reasons they were different. I was like, that's fantastic. You just cannot talk about it that way because they will not believe you. And today's buyers don't believe you. They don't trust you. They don't believe you. There's security in status quo because they're like, again, I got the containment around what's not going right. So when this gentleman started to tell me, okay, these are the reasons we're different, we were able to isolate like one of the things he talked about and be able to give it back to the prospect in a way where they were saying, hey, I'm making a relationship deposit with you. We've got this checklist. Some of these things are going to be obvious to you. Some of these things are really great and some will really surprise you. And they've been able to really get back all of their clients and grow.
The relationship deposit. I don't know that I've heard somebody say it just like that, because you are typically trying to do that, build some level of credibility with people you don't know.
Yeah.
And so when you're looking through, or not looking through, when you're dealing with the companies and you're talking to them, it sounds like you're seeing a lot of mistakes. But I also think that I hear a little bit of futuristic in you of like the way that people should be doing it. So what are the mistakes what are the clear mistakes that companies are making when they approach outbound or they're trying to do outbound for the first time?
Oh, I think the number one mistake they make is selling, right? It's all about me. This is how we can help you. These are the things we can do. You probably have this problem. Like there's no relationship deposit there at all. But if I were to say to them, for example, there are three major shifts that we've had our eyes on in the environment that we actually think is going to impact your business. I'd like to share those with you, even if there are no next steps. This way you can take it back to your team, and then I'll say to them, let's grab 20 minutes so I can share this with you. And so sometimes people will push and they'll say, well, yeah, just send me the info. And I'll be like, you know what? I could do that, but really it's the conversation. It's the context that I'm going to give you in the slides or the handout or whatever it is, because I want them to go, oh, I don't know what I don't know. And I know, and this is what I say about the vast majority of sales teams and those who are coming on, early in their career, your companies know. It's just that for so long, it was features and benefits and solution, right? And now it's about the sales conversation. And it's about having the things, the information, the insights that are not product related. Now, here's what happens though. When you start teaching them, the questions they should be asking, for example, they're going to say one of two things, maybe three. The first thing they're going to say is, wasn't even on our radar, haven't even thought about it, don't have any plan. The second thing they might say is, oh, yeah, we're thinking about it, but we actually don't really know what to do about it. So now you're getting this organic and authentic conversation. I'm still not pitching. I'm simply helping them solve a problem. About once every 2 years, I will get a conversation where someone will say, yeah, we already know all that. And I'm just going to come back to them and say, wow, you are very unique. I'm just curious, what else are you working on? Because you're way ahead of the curve. Mm-hmm. So I can always get around the conversation.
Interesting. So I'm going to gather that your preferred response to those three are number one or number two. Number three is likely the much harder one, right. But number one and number two. And so is that what you look to teach, is like, I want to get you to number one, or I want to get you to number two? Is there a better option as somebody is looking to go outbound? So let's just make a scenario. I'm a brand new company. I'm going to launch Outbound, but I've got a great PLG emotion. I've never done sales ed before. I've heard Beth talk about this full cycle rep. She's told me some really great things about, the difference between selling and helping, which I love, by the way. I heard Jay Baer say that at a conference one time, and he did this. The difference between selling and helping is 2 letters when he wrote his book Utility. And I don't know what he said for the next 15 minutes of that keynote, but I was writing, I had to physically take my pen out and wrote it down. And I'm looking at it going, what in the hell is he talking about? Because I didn't get it when I heard him. And then finally it clued in. And then he was so far into the keynote, I probably missed the best part of the whole thing. But that is a moment that stuck out of my life. And then the second part of it I heard you say is content versus context. So I can give you content, but it's the context of what my experience is. And that expertise is the other thing that I'm sort of hearing from you. And maybe I'm hearing it incorrectly, but I'm sort of bridging what I heard. That expertise is the key thing that generates the conversation with people. So when you approach this, do you want them to get that expertise? Do you want them to go, oh my goodness, Beth, like I'm in so much pain that one email landed? What is it that you sort of try to push them towards, that company that's going, I'm going to build my outbound, never done this before, the full cycle rep, content, context, I got all these things. Where do you get them to try to get them? How would you approach that to say, go and try these things and then see the success ratio?
Yeah. So what I tell companies is you can do a quick exercise, down and dirty, real easy. One, you just start writing down all your features and benefits. Like, why are you great? All of the things that make you just amazing. And then I would say take a day in between, because you kind of need to have that brain dump and that clear brain. And then the next day, look at your list and be like, okay, well, what fits together? How could I create an insight around it? What do I know? So when I start thinking about, what mistakes do clients make? What are they overlooking? What questions should they be asking? All the things that really become the part of the conversation that they should have. Because what I often find, especially when you have startups, they have a great idea. They do. They have a great idea. They can solve a problem, probably uniquely in a way that is different from other people. The challenge is that they go out and they try to convince prospects that is why they are a better solution, instead of teaching them and making that relationship deposit and being able to say, listen, I recognize you got a lot of options when it comes to this. We've been looking at the market. We recognize that one of the challenges that there are, you could say there's 3 challenges that organizations constantly are faced with. I'd like to share those with you because they're going to help you really come up with a holistic solution that fits your needs versus tacking things on or buying things in a certain way and then being really disappointed.
Do you, I have to ask because it's like right there. Do you know the author April Dunford? Do you know that name?
I know her name. I know nothing beyond that.
Okay. So she has a book called Sales Pitch.
That's a great title.
It's awesome. But inside of it, it sort of goes back to your air conditioning situation. So in the first little bit of the book, April talks about I use it. What's your toilet story? So if you ever thought about buying a toilet?
Oh, I have. Got to replace them. It's difficult.
How do you know they all look the same?
They do.
Things go in, you push a button, things go out.
Right.
So exactly how are they different? And so anyway, she tells this story about she has to buy a toilet because she's doing a renovation, etc. But it's something now that I think a lot about. And I think you just said it. List all your features, benefits, and then start to go, what's the problem that we're solving? So what's our toilet story that differentiates us from the market and the problem we're solving? That's sort of what I'm hearing you tell me.
Agree. It's the insight. It's the teaching. It's not about buying the toilet. It is about the things that you do not know. So if you think about the buyers today, I think like 2008 was just a paramount year in corporate America where we became real thin, right? So if you had 3 people doing one job or 3 people doing 3 jobs, you now have 1 person doing 3 jobs, right? So they're super, super busy. They're only focused on this solution when they need to be. So they're doing a lot of catch up. They're drinking from the fire hose. And I'll play this out. Let's just look at it this way. If I'm rep A and I come into the conversation and I say, I recognize you've got this challenge. Great news. We've got a holistic approach. We can solve this problem for you. Okay. I leave. Rep B comes in. Rep B comes in and goes, I know you're thinking about doing this holistically, but here's the challenge. They're trying to be all things to all people. We're going to just dial in on your biggest problem. Great. That's Rep B. Now Rep C comes in, right? Rep C goes, we can do all of that, and we're going to be about 30% less. Buyer's now paralyzed. Doesn't know who to believe. Doesn't know what to think. Nobody's taught them. They've been busy selling. And I would say in a number of cases, what you're going to find is that as an organization, you're probably better spending a little more money to know that you've got your TCO or your total cost of ownership all in, right? That everything is covered. Now, again, I'm making that up because it depends upon the provider, but there are cases that it makes sense to just pause for a second and say like, okay, what do I really need? What do I know? And what do I need to learn?
You've sort of sparked something in this conversation that I don't know that I've considered it. And you talked about teaching, and you've also talked about onboarding early on. And you said, here's the product, etc. Who inside companies today teaches how to write emails that convert?
Well, in my experience, there's not a standard. It's sort of like, you get reps where they get hired and they go, good luck, right? They onboarded them and out the door they go. You have some companies where leaders will kind of oversee, and then you have some companies where leaders will really coach and mentor and try to get the most out of their players. The challenge that I see consistently is that organizations get about 80% of the revenue from 20% of the reps, right? While the rest linger. And that's because they don't have a good strategy in place. So like when you think about emails, for example, the whole idea is that everybody's marching in the same direction, kind of like a leader. You want all your leaders to do pretty much the same thing. So you could take rep one and move them to A, B, C, and D, and it's always going to be the same. They don't have a hard learning curve. So when it comes to a sales team, what I always tell leaders is like, I would dictate the sequence to them, so that way we know in week 1, this is what we're sending. And in week 2, this is what we're sending. And in week 3, this is what we're sending. And like in my case, I do this all the time. So I will call, I will leave a voicemail, and I will send an email. And that's one transaction in 1 week, because it's sort of like learning, right? You've got people who are auditory, you've got people who are verbal, you've got people who are tactile, right? So we don't really know exactly what's going to land with them. Maybe they check their voicemail late in the day. Maybe they check their email late in the day or first thing in the morning. And now all of a sudden you're relevant. And so it really, when it comes down to how you help companies, for example, it really comes down to a lot of being consistent across the board, not letting everybody else do their own thing, like the wild, wild west.
That's exactly the question, because I've can't tell you how many times I've seen it. Here's your sequence, and they go, yeah, good. I'm going to do my own thing.
Right.
How do you advise companies to approach that?
Yeah. So I say it's non-negotiable, right? I did a training once in Chicago, and I said to the group, I'm like, they're your professional waiter routers. That's what your sales team is. They want to wait you out, flavor of the day. So if this is part of your strategy, you can say to them very clearly, like, I know you want to have autonomy. I'm great with that. I want you to give the autonomy. I also know we have a responsibility to the company. And I'm just going to ask 3 things. And what I tell leaders all the time is like, don't unload 3. Like you'll paralyze them. One at a time, and give them grace. And you need to be able to say, hey, next week, we're going to implement X. And I'm confident it's probably going to be a little bumpy in the beginning. I'm okay with that. We're all going to move in the same direction. We're going to do the right thing. And so this becomes a will. It's like one day I had a sales manager call me. He was furious that a sales team was not using their CRM. They'd spent $10 million on this thing. Right. It was no small feat, right? And he was so mad. I was like, wow, I didn't know there were so many swear words in the English dictionary. He was that pistol hot. And when he finally took a breath, I said to him, well, who's responsible? I mean, like, who is responsible for them using it? Woo, you could have heard a pin drop at that point, because then all of a sudden I think the light bulb went off. Like, I'm responsible. I'm not holding my leaders responsible. The leaders aren't holding them, the sales managers responsible, who then aren't holding the sales team responsible. And it was a completely different conversation after that. So it has to be part of your criteria. I've never understood, and listen, I've been one of those reps where I'm like, I'm going to do what I want to do when I want to do it, right? But the reality, we're in a different world. And so now, if you're going to be a sales rep, you can't be on a team for 10 years and not hit your quota.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that.
Yeah. You talked about this earlier on in the conversation, and you talked about metrics, and you said, and I'm kind of coming back to open rates do not represent engagement. When you launch your sequence, what are the metrics that you say, hey, here are the key things that you should be focused on, so that you have a clue of what to fix or what to double down on?
Yeah. I'll give you an example of a gentleman in specific. He's totally switched gears. He was a rock star where he was at, total rock star. And he changed industries completely. And so now he's out over his skis. And so he was sending emails, trying to get meetings. And if we go back to the purpose of an email is not to sell. The purpose of the email is to get the meeting. What you really want to track is how many meetings you get. He's getting about 30% meetings right now from nothing.
Wow.
So that's a really great sales rep. If you just look at it in terms of 20% is a good rep, 25 is a great rep, 30 is exceptional, he's getting a lot of at-bats at 30%.
So there's obviously would love to know, like, how? What's he doing differently? Is he sending money to somebody's house, flowers, gifts?
No.
What's he doing?
No, I mean, it's really very simple. The subject line has to pique curiosity. That's the key. We spend too much time in a subject line pre-selling and making it sound like it's so great,
Mhm.
right? I like words like challenge, concern, changes, like anything. Those all started with C, I just realized. But in reality, it's something that people go, whoa, wait, what's happening? And then when you get into the email, I just have a very simple 3 sentence formula. And the formula is, like, what do you know? Not lowering the barrier, not expecting anything. And then you got to ask for the meeting. And I do not like it when people say, hey, how about Tuesday or Wednesday at 3? I don't like when they send a bunch of dates. I want you to get a free Calendly link. And I want you to send a calendar link so that they can see very quickly when you're available. And now we've got a match. We take a step out of the process.
So that's a topic that is, I want to say, heavily debated. I've seen, and it's because I'm going to offer up some times for you to say yes or no
Yeah,
versus, hey, if you'd like to book time with me, put a calendar link in it.
right.
There's this notion of you're not in control versus you are in control. And
Yeah.
your suggestion is send the Calendly link. And if it works, it works. Is that your bet? Is that how you would suggest this?
Yeah, and the reason I would say that is I'm not selling. So normally the reason that doesn't work is because they're like, "Hey, this is what we do and this is why we're great and here's how we can help you and could we get some time together? Maybe we could spend some time so I can figure out what your challenges are, maybe we can help. And if you'd like to chat, here's my availability." Like there's no value in that. But if I tell them I know something, I tell them I don't expect anything and I give them a calendar link, that is a very different transaction.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't think it's been laid out like that for me. Like what I hear from others, and I know you talk. I think that's what you do most of the days. You talk to other leaders in businesses and say, get an insight on what they're doing. But that the way that you just explained it, I don't think has been as clear for me because it was the conversation that here is, well, if you send a Calendly link, you're basically waiting for somebody to book a meeting in your calendar, and you go, well, who's this, and what should I be doing?
Yeah. The other thing I think they make the mistake of is they say, if you'd like to chat, right? They're saying yes or no. I never say that. I say, grab 20 minutes with me. It's more directive. I'm saying
Mm.
do this versus, and we can have all kinds of debates about permission. I love permission-based questions. I love that in a conversation. But my job in my email is to get the meeting. Period. End of story. And if we're not getting the meeting, then you don't even have an opportunity to begin with.
Yeah, it's incredibly true. I just realized we've been talking for almost 45 minutes, and you have to get out of here, so I don't want to take you more. But this has been so fun. Before we jump away, uh, I I like this whole notion of everybody likes new, nobody likes different, and doing both at the same time can cause either friction or uncertainty. For companies that are thinking about their outbound today, or they're trying to build it, from our conversation today, what are 2 or 3 actionable things that on Monday morning they finish listening to the podcast, they go, Beth just told me to look at these 3 things or do these 3 things. What would you advise them to do to fix their outbound?
Yeah. I think the first thing you do is you got to look at an email and you have to be really honest. Like, is that something that if I was the recipient, would I lean into? So that'd be the first thing. Just got to be honest because I think sometimes it's really hard for people to be like, no, that's a really good email. We're really selling in that email. And that's the problem. There's the rub right there. You have buyers who are so busy and don't want to be sold. The second thing is I would tell you, look at the subject line. I have a rule, 2 to 3 words, tops, only capitalize the first word because it's not a billboard. We're not flashing. We're not trying to get, we're trying to make it look like this could have come from internal. And oh boy, I better figure out if I need to jump on this. And then the second thing I would have you look at, there's lots of things, but the second thing I have you look at, how long is it? My best emails are 60 words. So they're really short. And you may be like, how am I going to do 60 words? Well, I'm not selling anything. The whole idea is that I'm there to help them. I want them to understand. And again, it's one piece. You heard me say it earlier. I call, I voicemail, I send an email. That's my transaction because it's so critical, because it allows me to brand. And I'm not leaving a voicemail that says, hey, I just wanted to see if we could help you. I'm leaving a voicemail that's saying, I know something, I'm going to share it with you, and I don't have any expectation.
No share, no expectations.
Correct.
Awesome. Before we wrap up, we talked a bit about Beth Mastre and what you're up to. Do you want to share what you're up to now, or is that, do you want to
Yeah,
hold off?
no, I totally can share that. So I actually help companies with email. And here's the best part about what I'm currently doing is I work with a gentleman by the name of Anthony Iannarino, who's at thesalesblog.com. He is phenomenal, has 7 best-selling books. He dislikes email greatly. And I really like it because I think we complement each other so well there for that reason. And so I have kind of all these tools at my fingertips, but what I like to focus on is really the email, because I think like if you can open the door, you can get yourself some opportunities in your pipeline.
Awesome. Actually, it's funny you say that because Anthony, I believe, wrote, if I'm not mistaken, the AI Edge with Jeb Blount.
You did?
So
Yes.
I'm halfway through his book right now, which is fun to say. But yeah, so anybody is looking at their own outbound and they want to look at their messaging and they need to make some improvements. Obviously, Beth, you could, if you can't hear it from the conversation today, she's an absolute pro, and I guarantee she'll make a difference. So check her out, bethmastery.com. Anyways, let's wrap up. That wraps up another episode of the Revenue Problem Solvers podcast. Beth, I want to thank you for sharing these incredibly invaluable insights with us today. If you've listened, she put 3 to 4 strategies that you can put into place and put into action right away. If you found value in today's conversation, please like the episode, subscribe so you never miss a podcast or never miss an episode. If you have feedback, you want to be better, or there's a topic you'd like to talk about, love to hear from you. That's exactly how I got Beth, is we talked, it was through the conversation. Would love to have you as a guest. Thank you for investing your time with us today. Remember, success leaves clues in every conversation, and every revenue problem has a solution. Sometimes you just need the right conversation to find it. Until next time, this is Carl with the Revenue Problem Solvers, helping you turn obstacles into opportunities. Thank you for being with us today.